that have, can you all hear me? I see we're muting and unmuting. The companies that have cash during a recession are the ones that have power and influence. And if you don't have the cash yourself, and even if getting it from the bank and getting it from the government or wherever, it doesn't help, you might consider a value-added investor, somebody who ideally would buy a minority stake of your company, but then enable you to grow in other ways. For example, if you were a restaurant chain trying to grow, you might partner with somebody who's invested in real estate who could help you find locations that may be cheaper than they once were because of the economy changing. We know lots of people that during recession, if they have cash, go in and buy up lots of real estate, buy up companies. Equity investors are looking for deals. So if they think they can get your equity for cheaper than they could have a month or two ago, then they hopefully would be willing to invest. And the most important thing is to find somebody who matches your vision and your goals and your values about where you want the organization to go. Number three, and I think other seminars probably discuss this a lot, but make the tough decisions early to conserve cash. Companies that hold on to too many employees too long sometimes can get really hurt when they finally run out of cash. I think this is going to last another 2 or 3 months maybe, and the cash crunch is going to hit over the summer. So from an economic point of view, we may be going to the end of the year before we feel like anything is normal. And then by then, as you all know, you've been watching all the news as much as I have, that this may come back again, or maybe some other version of it may come back. But companies that may have cash now are going to be out of cash by the summertime, even with this government money probably. So we need to be thinking long-term about what it means. I know restaurants are looking at how will they operate at maybe 50% capacity. Disney's trying to figure out how to survive this, because people, even standing in lines, are in close proximity, so looking at virtual queues, et cetera. But anyway, how to make this, the tough decisions early. Number 4, understand your customer. You know, who is your customer, and what, why are they working with you? Who are your best customers? More importantly, which are the ones that are not going to run out of cash? How do you strengthen a relationship with them? How do you make sure that you get paid in advance from the ones who might run out of cash? I know a lot of suppliers or restaurants have started demanding cash up front, but understanding really, if you have time to reflect, who is your core customer? Why did they come to your establishment? Why are they loyal to you? What is it that, and then going into point number 5 is, what is the value that you bring to customers? Why is it that they choose you over your competitors? And is there a way to strengthen that? And especially looking forward to this lasting for 6 months or more, why is it that that they should work with you over your competitors? And what is it in this new environment that you bring that's different than what they were getting from you or your competitors before? And that leads into point number 7 or 6, which is understanding your competition and where they are, and most importantly, where they're going. In our firm, we use a simplified version of game theory to look at where organizations are going in the future. Most companies, when they develop a plan and they start implementing it, they look at it in a very linear way. Imagine if you had a plan at the beginning of the year to spend a certain amount of money on marketing and resources. Suddenly this epidemic hits in the middle of it, you've got to adjust your plan. What we do is typically look at scenario development throughout the planning process, so that we can think about, you know, what's the best case, worst case scenario, what are things that might disrupt the process, so that we can anticipate those, and then making the strategic plan agile or adaptive, so that it can change, and anticipating what might happen, we can work throughout it. Remember, when Hurricane Charlie hit, many of us were surprised because we didn't think a hurricane would directly hit Tampa Bay. But by the time the 4th one hit, we all had our plywood in our garage, and we were easily able just to pull it out and nail it up. Now we know the next time that we see this coming from China, we'll all go get toilet paper and water and Purell. But what will it mean for your business plan, and how do you keep it adapted? Number 7 is hopefully you have a written business plan. If not, now is a good time to write one. In the middle of a crisis, write the plan and figure out, you know, what does this mean to us going forward? Again, how do you make it adaptive? What is the value that we bring to customers? What's our revenue model? Will our revenue model change? You see the restaurants, a lot of them changed overnight to take out. It's a completely different model than most of them had before. and they're working with fewer staff members and trying to maintain a brand that's different than the experience that they had before. You see restaurants like Mise en Place, which is great food, but it's also an experience. Same thing with Burns, going to takeout. And so what does that takeout experience mean from that's different or adds value to what a customer experience is different than what they would get or has some of the similar attributes to what they would get if they were in the restaurant. Number 8, and I think this is a really important one, even though you might have to lay people off in the beginning, you see people like Jeff Gigante mentioned last night on a video that he laid off almost everybody. Now he's hired 20 more people back because a lot of companies have been donating food to first responders. So there are opportunities like that when you can hire your best staff back. Hopefully you kept the best staff in the beginning or the essential staff, but really importantly, your competitors will lay people off. And if you've done like we do and you've been monitoring who the really good people are in the community, if those folks get laid off, then now is the time to hire them. And you might be able to get a flexible arrangement because they have 0 and they want to go to something. But now there are going to be a lot of really, really good people on the market. And it's a great time to identify who those people are that you might want to hire. And also, ideally to bring them in and get them working for you right away. Number 9, and this seems far away unless you have access to cash, but consider acquisitions. And a lot of acquisitions you can do without cash. There might be other companies in your sector that are in a similar situation, and you could get an equity partner to buy them, or you could just work out some other kind of deal to bring them on board. And we can talk to you offline about how that might work, or an investment banker or someone could talk to you about it. But it's a time where if you had a fierce competitor, you might be able to take this opportunity to join up now and be even stronger when you come out. And also, if you could pool your marketing dollars, then you could be stronger as well. And that leads to number 10, which is to market aggressively. You see now suddenly there's a lot of business development. I'm getting more junk email than I've probably had in all the last 12 months. I've gotten more in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so there is clutter, and places like Twitter and others are very strict about how you can digitally market. But now is the time to aggressively promote your brand. The Wall Street Journal typically during a recession will have an ad that says, during recession, training and marketing are usually cut first. And I see Debbie Lundberg is on here. We know that keeping your best people, building loyalty with them, building your brand with your loyal people and your loyal customers is more important than ever, because as your competitors start to cut back on training and marketing, that's an opportunity for you to go in and take that market share away. Like I said, you can hire the best people, but also the people that were using your competitors' services or thinking about your competitors' services. Now's the time when you can get in front of them and tell them your story and try to win them over. First, it sends a signal that it looks like you're stable and solid, but it also shows that you aggressively want to grow. And we've seen that companies that invest, this is what the Wall Street Journal ad says too, the companies that invest in marketing during a downturn really gain market share as they grow out of it. And I'll just add an 11th one real fast, and that is we're all in a reaction mode right now, but we see people quickly moving to making strategic moves. And so what I would encourage everybody to do is to think about the long run. We've got an immediate situation that we're facing, but where's your organization going in the future? What are the strategic moves that we can make now to make sure the company succeeds and is more successful in the competition going forward? And with that, I will shut up and let anybody ask questions or comments or disagree if you want.
I have a question, Bill. I'm really torn on spending money on, not that I would spend a lot, but spending money on advertising on Facebook. Do you have any ideas about that right now?
What's your business? Sorry.
I do home and business inventories. I document content. So right now I'm doing nothing but pushing my name out as much as I can for when I can get back into people's homes.
Well, there's, and I know there are lots of people in the chamber that do this. You can get really aggressive about communicating on social media. If you have extra time on your hands, you can go into different forums and chat rooms and and promote what you do. Ideally, you'd have some simple graphics because the graphics show up better than just posting text. If you have an interesting video about it, you could post that. And then if it wasn't getting enough traction, then you could do a boosted post. I think if I didn't say this before, one thing is to just be tasteful. We don't want to say anything that would be offensive to anybody. But if you ran an ad that says, while you're sitting at home, now's the time to take your inventory, and here's why it's important to you. For insurance reasons or whatever, it's important to take your inventory. Or targeted to companies, the same thing. If now that you don't have any employees at your work site, there's an opportunity to go in and get this done so it won't be disruptive or whatever. There's got to be messages that would resonate. And what you could do is try with the kind of free stuff first. You'd have to do a graphic and maybe a video, but see if that works. And if it doesn't, then you could boost it. But you could use very small amounts of money if the audience is targeted. And you have to decide, is business more important than, are businesses more or less important than individuals in the targeting too? So if businesses are more important, you might look at LinkedIn as well.
This is Darren, Bill's business partner. I'll jump in on that too. I think there are so many channels, and Bill was touching on some of them, that are basically free, and $25, $50 can go a long way to hitting your target very, very directly, whether you're geofencing or creating profiles, so that rather than, there's an old saying about advertising. I know half my advertising works, I just don't know which half. Now you know exactly how to target these folks. So there's some really cost-effective options. And
from a budget point of view, $100 or $200 goes a long way in very narrow marketing.
I was just going to say something that's worked well for me personally and for us here as a business is just reaching out to your existing clients. I've had some wonderful, wonderful conversations with clients that I've worked with for 10, 11, 12 years, but we haven't had the time to really kind of connect on a more personal level in a way. So just reaching out to all of them one by one, checking in, seeing how they're doing. We've been giving free services to our existing clients to enable them to work remote. Just checking to see if they know another business that could benefit from a free service, just because we want to help people. But that's kept me very positive. And it's also just kind of reinforced a relationship that we've already had. And then another thing that I've done is I have specific referral partners as well that I've worked with for years and years and years, and, checked in with them, talked to them. And honestly, as a result of that, I have still been getting new regular business clients every week, honestly. At the same time, I'm also giving away services, to companies as well. So it's a good balance of being able to support the community at the same time as I'm also still selling. So it's kind of a win-win, scenario.
Yeah, two things that are happening right now. One is that I'm speaking in general to everybody, but whoever your competition is, they might be laying people off. And if they are, besides maybe laying good people off you'd want to hire, typically the relationships go with those people. And so let's say it's a bank. If someone really likes the banker that they're working with, and the banker they're working with is no longer there, they may not have any loyalty to the bank itself. They may only had loyalty to the person. And so it's a great opportunity to reach out to the prospects that you always wanted to get and see if they're unhappy or if they feel like they're not being serviced. The other thing that maybe you all have experienced too, but in the last couple of weeks, I found that it's pretty easy to reach out to people, very powerful people who normally would be so busy, it would be hard to get in touch with them, are easily accessible by phone and email. They're responding right away because they're sitting around like the rest of us at home. The meetings that they had to go to, the networking is not happening. And so it's pretty easy to do business development, to outreach to people. The other part of it is that, the old school way, which I like, is that you set up a meeting with somebody, you go meet with them for coffee, and you get to know them well. Now you can't do that, and so you have an excuse just to call them or set up a quick phone call, and it's cutting the time and investment you need to start to establish a relationship, and then you can set up the get to know you conversations for when we all come back. Anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions?
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Yep.
Dan Schneckenberger, Career Source, Tampa Bay. How are you?
Hey, good.
Very pertinent topic right now, where we sit as a workforce development board. And one thing we've been doing, two things. We've been reaching out to our clients, trying to figure out how are they doing? Are they holding on to employees via a specific industry sector? The manufacturing and IT groups seem to be holding on to their employees and working off their workload. Or concerned about pipeline, things of nature. You know, how is their orders going to be and client services going to be this summer? So you may see a delayed reaction in those sectors. Certainly hospitality, retail, and tourism have taken a major hit in the Tampa area. That's where I would tell you probably 3/4 of the unemployment claims are in that industry sector. But we have a number of retail clients who are hiring, and we're trying to get these people connected, even if they're only on a furlough basis. You hear that word a lot more. Well, we're really not laying you off. We're just going to put you aside for a couple months. So, and we want you back. That's going to be the real key in this recovery. How many of those employees are available when the go back to work order is out there? I hope I'm a little bit more optimistic than your viewpoint from a standpoint of when our economy can resume. But if it goes out beyond 4, 5, 6 months, I think all bets are off. Nobody really knows what that's going to do to any of these areas. Healthcare, we have clients that are hiring. One client's wants to recruit 300 registered nurses for their efforts. Some healthcare clients on the same scale of size are holding pat. Others are actually laying off people because their elective surgery business has dried up, and that is a moneymaker for them, and they need to get that back established. But they're going to wait and see until this COVID-19 crisis passes. So ultimately, there's a mixed bag, and every week it seems to change. So the earlier comment about talking to your clients and understanding where the talent is and who's available and who's not is very, very pertinent for everybody.
Just turning off my mute. Yeah, this situation, as everybody knows, is really different than any one that we've experienced in my lifetime anyway. You know, the Great Recession was pretty horrible, and it hit mostly worldwide at the same time. But this really is affecting everybody, and the countries that it hasn't affected yet, it will soon, and we're all interconnected in a global market now. So typically, in a typical recession, the U.S. goes down, and then maybe China and others would follow traditionally, and then as the U.S. or Europe would come out, then they would help everybody else. Now we've seen, you know, the rise of China and all these other countries as their own economies, and so the world economy is changing, and still it's interconnected. But now suddenly the whole world shut down at the same time. You know, I used to live in Singapore, and I was just texting one of my friends in Singapore just now. They were one of the last countries to go into lockdown. They were using technology to try to address this so they could keep the economy going. But now they're shut down too. So we'll see the companies around the world running out of cash. And, you know, usually companies, if they're lucky, will have 30, 60, 90 days of cash, but except for Apple. But if they run out of cash, they're going to run out of cash like in July or August. And so that's the time to really be careful about whether you're getting paid and make sure you're getting paid in advance. Well, as companies run out of cash and they're not able to pay their suppliers, that's going to have a ripple effect. And so that's why I think it will continue on for a few months. And you know, hopefully there will be some new industries that will come out of this. But it's pretty scary economically right now. if China comes out and the economy starts roaring, then if we're able to sell to China, then we could come out quickly too, but we'll see what happens. One of the things also about the economy, I mentioned Disney. I go to Disney a lot, and so I am watching what they're deciding to do. But let's say if they typically would have, I forgot the number, but 100,000 people a day, and now they're going to go to 50 or less, that changes all their models. Imagine virtual queues that have a lower capacity. Maybe the capacity on the rides would be half, and they close down half the seats or half the tables in the restaurants, and that could be the new norm all the way until this time next year if this thing starts to come back again in the winter. Sorry to be so down. It is an opportunity though. I mean, if you're thinking about business and there are companies here that have technology in the restaurant industry. There are probably companies that have queuing technology. There are informatics companies, data analytics companies. All those companies have tremendous opportunities right now as things move more and more online and customer experience is defined online. You know, I used the example of Burns. What is Burns experience online? If they have to go to half the number of tables through the end of the year, and I'm just saying what will that look like? How will they continue delivery when they're able to have people in their restaurant or not? And what's the experience that people have?
Hey, Bill, it's Kelly. Jessica Ravelli from Working Women of Tampa Bay, she and I did an interview yesterday with a media outlet where we were talking about what opportunities are there for a silver lining through this process that we're all going through, and the fact that some of our businesses have had to really pivot their business model. To your point, restaurants that have never done delivery or takeout before are now doing that. Retail stores who maybe have not previously offered delivery or online ordering are now doing that. Do you think there's an opportunity for businesses that have pivoted during the crisis to continue some of these new business models, even when things do get a little bit more back to business? And that in the long run, this may actually be some tricks and traits and things that will help some of our businesses long run. Because, for example, here at the Chamber, I've avoided doing video and webinars for probably 2 years just because it seemed overwhelming and scary. And now here we are doing them, you know, multiple times a week. So it's definitely an offering that we're going to continue to offer our members later on. Right now we're doing it complimentary thanks to the generosity of speakers like yourself. But in the future, it may be something that we're doing for a paid fee, perhaps from a lesser fee than we charge for some of our events where we have to cover the cost of food and whatnot. But is there an opportunity long run for businesses to take the things that they're doing now and tweak them and make them work as a new add-on to their business later on?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities for existing businesses that are transitioning, and there's also opportunities for completely new businesses. We see, for example, the distilleries converting to selling sanitizer. I don't think that will be a long-term thing, but it's interesting that they're looking at their business models in different ways, trying to figure out how to solve an immediate problem. But I think what it's really doing is it's pushing us more into the digital era. You know, the companies that the companies that have consumer products that aren't easily able to deliver are really in trouble right now. And that could more and more be the future. I mean, if Amazon can bring almost everything to your doorstep, what about the products that aren't on Amazon? As I've been ordering, even though Amazon seems like it has access to the world, the number of products is really different than Publix, for example. And so, you know, where do you build your online experience? How do you do it? I think there will be a lot of companies investing in online experience. And so the companies that are supplying the build out of that will be successful. But we're going to have to take it to the next level. Like you're talking about now, you know, we're all experiencing an online seminar, which is maybe different than before. How do we then take it to the next level to further differentiate South Tampa Chamber? You've been really aggressive about it, which is great. One of the interesting things will be, it could be that people's expectations will be that they'd much rather do this in 6 months than go to face-to-face meetings, or you'll have to have some combination because some people prefer face-to-face and some people prefer online.
We've definitely been able to engage a different market segment of our membership. There's people that are attending some of these events that for whatever purpose don't attend live events, and it could just be the time of day or that they're focused in their business, versus now people are able to work a little bit more on the business. But I definitely think that this will be something that will have some type of hybrid moving forward, because we've obviously seen that there's a demand and an interest from our membership.
I have a friend who has a retail store in Tampa, in South Tampa. And I told him a couple years ago, I said, look, if I can go in your store and scan the UPC and get it on Amazon, why would I buy from you? And so you've got to create an online presence. Your future is an online presence. Everything has got to be related to an online presence. And that's marketing, it's interactivity with building the brand, building the online experience that people have. And you've got to have differentiated products and services to be able to deliver that. You know, in our firm, we're working remotely. Rarely in the last few years have we had to go on a client site, and now we're doing it all remotely, and it's working seamlessly so far. So it's really forcing us all to change the way that we do business. And within all of that, I think each of us has to look at what that means for our business and how we'll deliver the services.
Hey, Bill, this is Steve Riddle with the American Lung Association. And something that kind of laid on that is I'm just curious, and maybe even open it up to the group, is it 2 months out? Is it 4 months out? Is it 6 months out that we, you know, doing this, that we turn to a new phase and going forward, like Kelly said, that kind of a hybrid? Or is it going to be everybody snaps back to the normal, you know, once everything gets cleared, that we really kind of lose focus of what, you know, we learned and what we gained from this experience?
I don't know. I'm listening to probably the same sources that you are listening to, trying to predict the future. But Charles Lockwood from USF was interviewed by the mayor the other day, and he said what and forgive me if I don't quote him exactly right, but what he anticipated is that at some point after the peak, think about a few days ago, the peak was predicted for May 3rd. I think now it's predicted for 2 to 3 weeks from now, end of April. But if that's the peak, that means that all the time that we spent before the peak, we most likely have to spend after the peak. You know, if you look at a model, you know, the part that we're hitting on the curve before the peak is going to probably be similar on the other side if it doesn't pick back up again through international travel or domestic travel or the weather changing. And so what he was predicting was that sometime after the peak, let's say a month after the peak, maybe the people who have the antibodies already would be cleared to go back to work. And that was just his idea. I haven't heard anybody try to legislate that, but there is apparently a test for the antibodies now. And many people think that they've had a milder version of this. I know 4 people who have had it for sure. They're diagnosed. One of them in the hospital almost didn't survive, like 40 years old. The other one, 31 years old, didn't go to the hospital, but almost didn't survive. It's a nasty virus, but I know other people who have been diagnosed with it where it was just like a flu. And so you all have heard the news the same as I have. The infection rate is probably many times higher than what we think it is right now. And so when we start doing antibody tests, for sure the people that already have the antibody should be able to go back to work. That's assuming that we don't show a reinfection. And I haven't seen evidence. They had some rumors of that in China, but I haven't seen evidence that for sure would happen. But anyway, if the people that have antibodies go back to work, hopefully that would be a large part of the workforce. And then the people who were at lower risk of dying would go back. And then the people that are high risk health-wise probably would be advised to work remotely for maybe several months until this clears. The question is like remember I think it was 2002, was it, or 2004, when we got Hurricane Charlie, and then we had 4 hurricanes in a row. You know, how many people had houses that time that still have the plywood in their garage? Now that this has happened, we've got to expect that it could happen anytime. You see these other infections like SARS and Ebola that never really came here. And so a lot of people thought that we wouldn't all get infected with it. But now it has hit. And so we all need to have contingency plans in case it continues. or in case something else comes back, version 2 or version 3 of it. And what would our business plan look like? How would we continue to operate? Many organizations weren't even in the cloud yet. I mean, thank God we went into the cloud really early on 10 years ago. It was difficult back then, but we did. But look at companies like ConnectWise and somebody was mentioning IT industry, the old TriBridge and others. That any business that's helping people get into the cloud and work remotely, they must be printing money.
I think that's a great point, Bill. We made that transition in the chamber from our operations after Hurricane Irma, because even though the hurricane didn't hit Tampa directly, our office lost power for 10 days, and I had employees that had evacuated, and we had to work remotely from 3 different states for more than a week. And there were a lot of challenges that we had during that time that we were able to find solutions to, so that when this particular crisis happened, we were already prepared to make that transition pretty smoothly and seamlessly. But I don't know that we would have made that change had Irma not, had we not gone through that experience. So I think this is a great opportunity for businesses that maybe have some downtime right now to look at what is their crisis preparation look like, and what can they be doing going forward to better protect their business.
Kelly, maybe you've done this before, but you might want to have a futurist or a risk management person come and talk about what all the potential risks are, because hurricane is one, this is one, electronic attacks, cyber attacks. I like to watch dystopian shows like The Walking Dead and others like that. But there's one that was called, I think, Revolution, where everything electronic stopped working. Well, now all these dystopian shows seem possible. And so what would we do then if we couldn't use electronics? We need to have contingency plans, and maybe we wouldn't spend a lot of money on each of them, but we need to be thinking about what would the future look like? Where is our money? How much do we have to survive? What would happen? How would it affect our supply chains? How would it affect how we operate? We moved into the cloud because of the hurricanes, because we knew that when Tampa City Center shut down, we couldn't run our server anymore, and so we were down. Well, what about if those redundant systems that Microsoft has shut down? But a big one for South Tampa that we need to be thinking about is sea level rise. If you looked at the predictive models, it looks really bad for South Tampa, and that affects probably all of the businesses in the South Tampa Chamber. And so hopefully government will find ways to address that. But how would it affect us over the next 10 or 20 years if we don't address it?
I smiled, I giggled to myself a little bit when you were talking about the server. We moved to the cloud after Hurricane Irma. We switched everything over to Microsoft 365, but prior to that, our server lived on a very old tower, which I brought home with me to my house during Hurricane Irma, so that we had the server physically here with us in my home versus the office, so that I knew where it was, and that if I had to evacuate, that I could take it with me. Because at the time, everything, all of the documents and everything that the chamber had, our almost 100-year history was located on that server that was traveling around with me in my car and here in my home. So that was one of the first transitions that we made as part of our long-term crisis management, because I can't imagine having to evacuate, with a 40-pound desktop computer traveling around with me.
And try to, in hurricanes, you have to worry about what happens if cell phone towers go down too. We were, Tucker Hall was outsourced to a bunch of clients during the Hurricane Charlie and the subsequent hurricanes. And the interesting thing then is IP telephones didn't work because the internet was not reliable. And so it was the old copper phones that we all had to use to help clients, because they were more reliable. So anyway, having contingencies and redundant systems, but more importantly, going back to the topic before we cut, is what are the business opportunities? Where is it that you can transition your business, and not just for the next 60 days to survive, but what I would encourage everybody to do is to look way far out about where you think what is your picture of where you think the world is going to go, using the best information you have, and figuring out what is the business opportunity for you. How can you adjust your business to take advantage of where that will change? how will you adapt to what your competitors are doing and what your customers need?
Any additional questions or last thoughts before we end today's session?
I just wanted to say a silver lining for me is the forcing of telemedicine. I don't know. This is the best thing that's happened out of this whole thing to me, is being able to have a doctor's appointment from my desk, forcing them to do it.
I hate sitting in a doctor's office waiting.
It's awful.
I'll end hopefully on a positive note. Back in 1990, I was in an MBA program at the National University of Singapore, and one of my professors was a consultant to a big Japanese company. And at that time, the Japanese and to some extent Singaporeans were laughing at the United States because we had forced AT&T to break up and some other big companies to break up. And then 91, 92, we hit a recession and a whole bunch of people were laid off. And so while the US was going through a bad recession, I was working in Singapore and they were booming. But what I saw is as proud as the Asian Tigers were at looking at what was happening, comparing to the US at the time, what I saw happen is really for the first time that I remember, a large number of very well-educated middle-class people were out of a job in the early 90s. And it's different than other kinds of layoffs. And so what I saw happen is, and my simple analysis of the 90s, is what really drove the economy in the 90s was not any kind of government intervention. It was that when you take really smart people and you take away their job, they invent new ideas. They find ways to succeed. And everybody who's facing a challenge right now has already succeeded past other obstacles before, and we'll all figure it out. The opportunity here is how do we become even more successful? How do we fulfill the big dreams that we have despite all of this? And I think that once we get past the worst of this, I think that there will be a lot of really good people who will innovate, create new companies and new ideas, and the world will change because of that innovation.
Thank you so much.
I got a question. This is Subhash from Flames Indian Restaurant. What is the best way to marketing this time for the business like a restaurant? So that's what I need you.
Which restaurant did you say it is?
Flames Indian Cuisine.
Oh yeah, I love that restaurant. I saw you're on Uber Eats, right? Or one of those?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to talk to you offline, but one of the things I would do is, I don't know if everybody else has experienced this too, but because we're not easily able to go to restaurants, I think we lack variety, and people who are able to cook or are learning how to cook are getting lots of variety in their homes. But what I think you bring is a variety or a change of flavor that other people or that people might not be experiencing. And most families in South Tampa can't cook that food. And so I think you have a real advantage. What I would do is run digital ads and, say, you don't have to use these words exactly, but I would say something like, wouldn't you like something different for dinner tonight? Bring variety to your dinner table or bring variety to your family. Try Indian food or Indian food delivered at your doorstep.
Okay. Thank you.
And we know that it's good because multiple times they won the Taste of South Tampa. So we know that South Tampa loves your food.
Subhash, I was going to say, why don't you do a video series from your Facebook page talking about your spices?
Okay.
Something like that. You know what I mean? Like, because I know you were going to shut down for a couple of weeks, but to keep your audience engaged with you and what you're doing, maybe kind of give a glossary of what the ingredients are, because, the spices are wonderful. So maybe kind of look for something like that you can provide the knowledge and keep your customers engaged with you during that time.
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you very much.
And what I would do is the same thing we talked about a few minutes ago. I would post all over social media and make sure you have some graphics that you can post with pictures of the food and some headlines that position it. But if that doesn't get you the kind of volume that you want, for $100 or $200, you can run a lot of digital ads. And I would just target South Tampa, and I would put in whatever services you have. You can say take out and put Uber Eats logo and whatever other DoorDash and
Okay.
try to drive people to there.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian.
And remember, for all of us, it's a great time to show gratitude. So if you let people know you appreciate them coming in and what it means to your family and to the staff, it's a really good time to tell a great story about how you are appreciative and you provide this great food.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Bill. Thank you to Tucker Hall. This was a lot of great information today. I'm sure that as we continue to move forward through this process, we'll probably have you come back to speak again as we start moving into the recovery and rebuilding phase. But thank you again so much for your constant support of the Chamber. And if there's any additional questions, I'm going to leave this room open for about another 10 minutes or so. If there's anyone that wants to continue to just be able to network or speak openly with the group. But thank you all so much for being here. We do have a few more events scheduled for this week, and next week's calendar is already up online as well, and hope to see all of you virtually again very soon.
I'm going to put my email address in here. If you all need anything or want to chat, I'll put my email and my cell phone. You're welcome to contact me.